There is a kind of truth that cannot be spoken into existence, only allowed to emerge when words have ceased. You've experienced moments when the air thickens with the unspoken. At a dinner table, a conversation falters and the room fills with the sound of cutlery and breathing. Some feel awkward and rush to fill the void. Others smile softly, embracing the pause. You have been both people, the filler and the witness. In the rush of daily life, silence is often treated as a problem, a gap to be patched with commentary. Yet there is another pattern unfolding beneath the constant exchange of words. There is a quiet power that seems to envelop situations when everyone finally falls silent. You have sensed it in arguments that ended not with a conclusive statement, but with both parties exhausted, a shared exhale dissolving tension. You have sensed it in nature, where no human voice intrudes, and yet everything feels vibrantly alive. There is a mysterious, almost mystical quality to silence that makes it feel like a winner, even though it has no voice. The unresolved mystery is why your mind, trained to speak and respond, resists this winning, and what might happen if you trusted silence rather than feared it. Your earliest years were filled with sound. Parents, teachers, televisions, radios, all teaching you that communication is paramount. Questions were rewarded with answers. Speech was seen as intelligence, obedience, engagement. When you stayed quiet, adults asked if you were okay, if something was wrong. Noise meant life. Silence meant absence, worry, or disobedience. In school, you learned to debate, to defend, to present. Being articulate was power. The world you inherited was built on declarations and proclamations. Even in friendships, the proof of love often arrived via words. Tell me how you feel. Say it back. Explain yourself. Silence was rarely interpreted as depth. It was misread as apathy or ignorance. Yet, there were sacred pockets of quiet that warmed you unexpectedly. Sitting alone under a tree, the wind replacing conversation. Reading a book in a library, the collective hush allowing you to sink deeper into imagination. Watching someone you love sleep, speaking not a word, but feeling closer than any conversation could produce. These experiences hinted at another reality, where silence was not void, but presence. As you grew older, these hints multiplied. The most profound moments, the pause after "I love you," when both of you felt the weight of the words, the stillness after someone dies when memory floods the room, the quiet before a performer begins, when the audience holds its breath, were imbued with significance, not in spite of silence, but because of it. As your life became more saturated with information, silence became rarer. You filled commutes with podcasts, workouts with playlists, showers with news briefings. Even your alone time was punctuated by notifications. The idea of sitting quietly without engaging with content felt wasteful, almost suspicious. You wrote to think, texted to connect, spoke to work through feelings, but there were moments when all the words felt stale. Advice from friends circled back on itself. Therapies of talking seemed to intellectualize emotions rather than heal them. Debates on social media turned into echo chambers. You noticed that in heated arguments, the escalation rarely ceased with more words. Instead, resolution often arrived in the form of exhaustion, a cessation of arguing. After the silence, clarity emerged. Apologies sounded different, less performative. The body softened. A new understanding glimmered, one that had been impossible to access in the noise. Silence is often perceived as passive, but you began to see it as active. It does not simply lack sound, it invites something else to arise. In conversation, when you pause after someone speaks, leaving space rather than immediately responding, something shifts. The other person might fill the space with deeper truth. They might say, "Actually, that's not entirely it," and go further into vulnerability. Or they might sit with their own words and hear them properly, sometimes leading to self-correction. Your silence in that moment is not withdrawal, it is a gift. It shows that you are listening beyond the surface. It tells the other person that you trust what unfolds in the pause. There is also the silence within yourself, the quiet you can choose not to fear. When you meditate or simply sit without stimuli, the initial phase can be uncomfortable. Your mind races, urges to check your phone arise, past embarrassments replay. You might hear an inner critic ask what productivity looks like in silence. You might feel the emptiness you have been avoiding. But if you stay long enough, the storm of thought begins to settle. You hear deeper sounds, the hum of your fridge, the faint rustle of leaves outside, your own heartbeat. Sometimes you hear nothing external, and in that nothing, a different kind of sound emerges, a subtle awareness that holds everything without clinging. You begin to see that silence is not emptiness, but a container. It holds whatever arises without demanding immediate response. And within that holding, insights bubble up, not through effort, but through release. You recall things you forgot, make connections you didn't realize were there. Solutions to problems you've been wrestling with appear fully formed, as if they needed space to assemble. In a world that equates saying with knowing, choosing silence can feel like losing. If you do not defend yourself, you might fear being misunderstood. If you do not pitch your idea, will someone else's take credit? If you do not contribute to a conversation, are you seen as irrelevant? These fears are not unfounded. Silence can be misinterpreted. Power dynamics can silence those who need to speak. The silence I speak of, however, is not submission. It is intentional. It is the difference between being silenced and choosing to hold silence. The former is oppression. The latter is agency. When you learn to discern the difference, you gain a form of power that is not contingent upon volume. Consider an example. You are in a meeting where ideas are bouncing around rapidly. Everyone is eager to sound smart. You listen. At first, you feel the urge to interject, to prove you exist, but you hold the urge. You watch as the conversation swirls, often circling back to the same points. When the noise settles, you speak. Your words are fewer, but they are weighted. They come from listening rather than from reacting. You propose a solution that synthesizes the scattered ideas. The room quiets. People nod. It is not that you dominated with volume. It is that you allowed the group to exhaust its superficial level and then guided it deeper. Your silence was not inactivity. It was preparation and observation. Silence wins in personal relationships too. When someone you love is suffering, your instinct may be to fill the space with reassurance or solutions. "It will be okay," you say. Or, "Have you tried this?" The words come from care, but sometimes they land as minimization. What if, instead, you sit with them and let their tears be? You place a hand on their shoulder and offer no words at first. In that shared silence, they may feel truly seen. Your presence speaks louder than advice. Later, you might offer thoughts, but in that initial quiet, you honor their experience without overlaying your narrative. There is a trope that silence is complicit, that to remain quiet is to allow injustice. There is truth here. Silence can be used as a tool of avoidance. But paradoxically, silence can also be where courage is cultivated. Before a whistleblower speaks truth to power, they sit alone in silence, wrestling with consequences. Before a march for justice, there is a moment of silence to remember why the march matters. Silence is the womb where words of weight are formed. Without it, speech becomes reactive rather than intentional. As you practice embracing silence, you may find that your speech changes. You speak less often, but what you say carries your full presence. You listen without formulating a response while the other person talks. You pause before answering questions, allowing yourself to feel whether your answer is true or simply habitual. You realize that not every question requires an immediate answer. Sometimes, "I don't know," is the most honest thing you can say. You become comfortable leaving space in conversations, trusting that the other person can sit with the pause. You discover the joy of being with someone without having to talk. You walk together, sit side by side, drive in the car while music plays softly, and the connection is palpable. Silence, in these instances, is not the absence of connection, but its medium. There's a reason wise teachers across traditions emphasize silence. In monastic life, silence is the path to hearing the divine. In therapy, moments of silence allow clients to access deeper feelings. In art, the spaces between notes create rhythm. In architecture, empty space defines a room. Your life, too, is shaped not just by what you say and do, but by the pauses you allow. In those pauses, your nervous system resets, your body relaxes, your mind reorganizes. Eventually, you may come to see that silence wins not by overpowering words, but by outlasting them. Words come and go. Arguments rise and fall. Silence remains, patient and vast. When you stop fearing it, you can enter it willingly. There, you meet yourself without the costumes you wear for others. You sit with the rawness of your own existence. This can be terrifying because it removes distractions. It can also be liberating. You realize you are more than your opinions. You are more than your narrative. You are a presence capable of holding joy and pain without dissolving. The world will continue to ask for your voice. There will be times to speak loudly and times to whisper. But beneath every utterance, let there be a foundation of silence. Let there be a place you return to when the noise becomes too much. In that quiet, you remember who you are. You gather strength. And then, when you emerge, your words are chosen, your actions aligned, your presence grounded. Silence wins every time, not because it defeats sound, but because it is the ground upon which all sound rests.